Wow, what an entrance, isn't it? In my future moderating life, this is how I want to be welcoming the people with such warmth and greatness. Even I come to Ake, Lola introduces me, and I'm feeling, I know why I did the photo shooting. I'm feeling great with myself. And this is Ake, this is Lagos, this is a particular vibe. So welcome on stage. It's now day 3. One of the benefits of having a panel on day 3 is like, you get the energy, you get the vibe, you had so many conversations. The 3 of us had time to connect over various occasions, and I'm looking really, really forward to have these conversations because individually you are so great people. I already feel like you're sisters, and let's start. So we are talking about curating Black culture, and there is so lot that has been said about it. My question, what does it mean for you individually? Why do you do what you do?
Okay.
Karibu.
First of all, before I say anything, I just want to be a little upset that we didn't get the brief for the photo shoots. I mean, do you have a photo shoot? I'm like, what was the brief? So next year we'll do a photo shoot.
Definitely.
Thank you, and thank you, Lola, again for the invitation. Curating Black culture, for me, it means listening a lot, paying attention to what people are speaking, doing, and feeling, and finding a way to manifest that through the work that we do. And to describe the work that we do in Nairobi, I am an author, as you've heard, but also a co-founder of an organization called Book Bank. Book Bank is about 7 years old, and we exist solely to restore public libraries. So we have 3 flagship projects in Nairobi. One of them is Nairobi's oldest library, and Kenya's second oldest. It's called the Macmillan Library, and it has 2 other branches in the eastern part of the city that are much younger, much more connected to community, and are just like vibrant community spaces. So we've renovated those 2. And our approach to renovation and restoration means really building palaces for the people, which means listening to what people tell you they want and then delivering it. And that is what, inadvertently, you end up curating Black culture, because when you ask people what they want to gather, they want to listen to music, they want to have festivals in their libraries. And we make all that happen because we think that it's urgent that we have the spaces where people can see each other for what they share, not what they have what they don't share, what they have as differences.
Thank you.
Okay.
Velia.
I am really nervous because I don't speak in English really good. Buenas tardes en español para todos. I am really happy for staying here. It's my first time in Nigeria, exactly in West Africa, and it's really, really important for me. About this, I prefer talk about in plural. I prefer not think in one Black culture. For me, this is a very big problem because it's very common that this concept, one Black culture, is very near to the stereotypes. The Black culture is really different in Colombia, in Argentina, in Brazil, and of course, in Africa. Yeah? We have many things in common. We have a root in common, but we have some particularities, yeah? And when you are curating the culture, it's necessary thinking all days in particularities, yeah? You can make a good job in the curating the culture if you are thinking with only Black culture, yeah? For me, it's important think in the rights. The culture is a right. The imagination is a right. And when we think in the problems or the violence about the Black people, usually we don't think in the cultural rights. Yeah, And the actions, the inclusion or positive affirmative actions, usually put the rights, cultural rights, in the last part. Yeah. And for me, all days I am working for the cultural rights, the black people in Colombia.
Oh, so good afternoon, everyone. So your question was, what do we do, what we do?
Essentially, yes.
Yes.
And what black culture means to you individually.
So I think the first part is, I think for us, so Gaborone Book Festival Trust is run by me and my sisters. So we felt that, not even feel, there was no literary spaces and platforms in Gaborone that were very consistent. So you have the occasional book, launch, and that was it. But we are readers first, and we felt that there's no platform. We had to access literary festivals from South Africa. So all the time we had to plan maybe 2 or 3 times a year to travel to South Africa so that we can go to book festivals. So 1 year, 7 years ago, we decided that we are going to create a platform. We think that there are enough people in Gaborone who would be interested in a platform like that, and we just went ahead and did everything that we had to do, and self-sponsored part of our very initial and first festival to get it started. So that's how determined we were to create that platform. And a lot of things has come out of it. So I believe that that's also where the co-creation, and not necessarily just because we do that with other people, the co-creation of black culture and in its diversity, as she just said, comes through. We do a bit of poetry in there, and not just poetry, like Botswana poetry, which also faces, its challenges, or I think more on the extinction side, but it's such a powerful way for our people to express themselves. So we bring in other elements into the festival, and even beyond that, we run a school outreach program, which we are very, very intentional about, and has been a big focus this year to revive it, where we go into schools and we read aloud to kids in primary schools. And these are primary schools, also government, in hard-to-reach areas, and in low economic, parts of the country as well, because we know that, in those situations, parents do not have money to even purchase a book for the kids. So that's just how we plant the seed for reading at an earlier age. And we are intentional also on the books that we read aloud to, or the stories, or the children's authors that we work with. You have to be a Botswana, or you have to be African, you have to be black. That's it.
You've all already dipped a little bit into the work that you do. However, I'm interested in terms of the festivals you do, the effort it takes at first. I'm not entirely sure I understood what drives you and why would you go through all this where culture is not necessarily easily funded. Help us a bit understand, what are your drivers? Why do you go day to day through all these challenges aside of your daily lives, your daily jobs, your writing careers? What is it that you feel you want to, why would you want to create a platform?
Okay. So, when I was writing my first book, I wrote my first book as part of a thesis for my master's program, and I had to go to South Africa to do that master's program because I couldn't find a program in Nairobi that kind of fit my needs. I'm not saying they're not there, I just didn't find the right program for me. So I spent 4 years in South Africa writing this book. Incredible time because I had dedicated time to write, and that, as you know, is a gift for any writer. And when it was time for me to move back home, because I had spent a lot of that time inside libraries writing my book, I moved back home because Nairobi is where I want to live. I realized there are no libraries that I'm going to write my next book in. I don't want to have to fly out every time I want to write my next book, because libraries are where I create. And so it became very clear to me that I didn't want to live in a city that didn't have vibrant libraries. And that became, I guess, the root of the impetus for the work that we do with Book Bank. The Literary Festival, NBO Lit Fest, which happens every year in June 26th to 29th, 2025, shameless plug. It's one of almost, like, we have so many programs in those libraries. We do everything from teaching kids music, art, dance. If you want to learn how to code, we will give us time and we'll find someone to come and teach you how to code. Recently in June, we had a lot of protests. June this year, we had a lot of protests in Nairobi around cost of living and just basic like poor governance. And as a result of those protests, we've had a lot of requests for civic education in the libraries. So that's kind of why we do what we do, because in addition to me wanting a space where I can write all of my next bestsellers, inshallah, I really want a space where people can really gather and do everything they imagine. The libraries we've created are truly palaces. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how much money you have, what you believe, or who you know, you're welcome. And the change that has had in the communities we've worked in has been so rewarding, because these spaces are peddling dignity every single day.
Thank you so much.
This year, 2024, we are celebrating the life to Arnoldo Palacios. He was a very important Black writer in Colombia, exactly in Chocó, that is my region. Arnoldo Palacios have a novel that the name in Spanish is Buscando mi Madre de Dios. In English, maybe it's, we're looking for the Mother of God, yeah? This meaning, looking the sustenance, looking the food for the day, looking the job for the day, yeah? And in the last days and last month, I am using this expression for say that in the literature or in the cultural manager, I was found my mother of God, yeah? And this is very important because bell hooks say in Sisters to the Ñame, Hermanas del Ñame, Sisters to the Ñam is the name here, yeah? That you can't to help to others if you don't have an oxygen max, yeah? And for me, it's very important and it's clear that the first needs was my freedom like writer, my freedom in the exercise to my culture's rights, yeah? And really, day for day, my first job is the exercise to my freedom in the literature, to my freedom in the culture. And next, I can help with others. I can job with my community because with my experience, I know the importance to this with others, yeah? And really, I wake up all days because this is my purpose in the life.
So I think for us was, I think one of the authors earlier talked about how the book that she wrote, haunted her. So she didn't want to write the story, but the story wanted to be written, so it haunts you. So I think when we came to now agreeing with the sisters that we want to do the festival, it just kept on coming to us. And it started just haunting us. And we felt like we have to do something. And I think one of the things that we have got a similarity, me and them, and our twins, is we get obsessed. So for us, if we we just have that obsession with something that we want to do. That's just how we do things. So we got obsessed with the idea. And we knew that because we are obsessed and captured and haunted by this idea of creating a literary platform, we had to do it. And the three of us have got different... I work full-time. I told you that I work full-time in a bank. And not just a bank, a top-tier one type of bank. So a lot of pressure, a lot of, everything. So I have to, we had to get to a point where also time management is so essential in my life. Because right now, my son is 7 years. Gaborone Book Festival is 7 years. So you could imagine, and by that time, I'd been married for 2 years. So I had all these 100 things, the full-time job, the marriage to look, the kids, and then this new baby as well who needed time. But we just had to do it because to us was, if we don't do it, then nobody is going to do it. So we did it with the whole thinking that we are the ones whom we've been waiting for, so we have to do it. And it's just a challenge that we took on, and we took it very serious. Like I said, I think when we started, I was in my early 30s. My sisters were in their late 20s. And I remember starting to work, and I had this insurance savings account that I had never touched before. Because we didn't have sponsors, we said, where are we going to get the money from? So I had to, actually, then I remembered that I had this insurance that I've never used, but I've been saving for it since I started working. And then I had to take the money from there. And I think yeah. And then we had to, because we also believed that we had to invest. And the thing was, I work in brand and marketing, so I spend a lot of time also doing events. And I knew the first festival, I knew it had to be right because we are building credibility, we are building, credentials for the platform, and it has to look in a certain way. So then they also contributed. So each one of us opened our personal purses to contribute, because sponsorships takes long. You could be talking to a partner for a year, 2 years, 3 years. They only come board on the 5th year after starting the conversations 5 years ago. So we were talking to people, but we were not getting the money instantly. But we had set a date. So at the time that we registered the trust, we actually set the date also for the festival. So, and we started just talking about it, on social media, on local media. So we had made a commitment, and we had to make it happen. So the three of us contributed and say, this will be our seed, and then if the partners come on board, then the trust will pay us back. And that's what happened. So we were the ones that we're waiting for, whom we've been waiting for, and we just had to do the job.
I love the sentence very much. We were the ones that we have been waiting for. That's a very powerful sentence, and a sentence hopefully that inspires a lot of other people, that when there are things that we see that we want it to happen, we can imagine it, that maybe you are the individual one to make it happen. And you helped us already, taking us a bit through the journey, and I was very curious to see what are the motivations, what are the drivers. So incredible. And then, Velia, to you, in terms of Afro-Colombian culture, maybe this is a chance for us to get a bit more context, a little bit, to understand where Afro-Colombian cultures within the mainstream Colombian culture lies. And you also suggested to show a little bit of a movie to help.
Yeah, I think that maybe we can put the movie,
yes,
and next we talk, yeah?
As we like to say in Germany, Film ab. I'm sure 2 people understood. We are rising the tension, how do you say, the excitement. Soon.
The sound is okay. It's in another part is the film, but I listen.
Okay, then let us know when you're ready in that sense. So we just continue in that sense. Maybe you could,
Of course. It's very difficult to talk about the Afro-Colombian people in short time, But for me, I try this moment. It's very important now that the Afro-Colombian people is Afro-descendant people. And for this, I am really happy for stay here. Exactly, we are descendants to the people to the West Africa, For the notarial, registros notariales, registers, official registers, we know that we are descendants to the West African people. But with a little difference, We are descendants to the people that was a slave, The slavery is a very, very, very problem for us. It's a most big crime to the humanity. 12 millions, the African people was registered officially like slaves in America, And it's a very complicated number because we know that only 60% the people survive to the trip. 12 million. And the people say, all humanity is descendant to the Africa people. But not all humanity descends to the slavery people. The slavery is the support to the capitalism. The extraction to the commodities was not possible. Sugar, gold, cotton was not possible if we don't have slavery. And the wealth in the present to the UK, Europe, United States, and Canadian is only for the lives to the African people in America. Okay, the Afro-Colombian people come to this situation. And for this, our life is absolutely different. In Colombia, the slavery was, wait me because I need my notes.
Take as much time as you need.
Only the slavery was abolished. Abolished, and 173 years ago. After this came a period that we know, the century of racial silence. In this time, the people said about the mito del mestizaje. Myth is the pronunciation? Myth of the mestizaje. This says the people believed that we had all mixed, to such extent that there were not black people in Colombia. The people sinned, and in the present, some parts in the world, the people think that in Colombia don't have people, But in the present, we are 5 million to the Afro-Colombian people. This is the 9% to the population in Colombia. It's very big, the population in Colombia. But the abolition, we don't have any action to the inclusion, any action to for the participation in the communities. Only in the Constitution in 1991, the state in Colombia recognized the people, the black people in the country, the black people in Colombia is black people or Afro-descendants, and raizal people is the black people in the islands, San Andres, Providencia, and Santa Catalina, and the palenqueros is the people to the palenques, to the quilombos, yeah, the people to resistance in small communities before to the abolition to the slavery, yeah. And next to 1991, we have new laws and new opportunities. And in this moment, we have, for example, collective lands territories, yeah, collective territories. And we have a very special and interesting political process in all blacks lands in Colombia. And for this, in this moment, for first time in the history, we have the first black and woman vice president, Francia Marquez.
Thank you so much for sharing. Shall I ask, how are we progressing with the video, the small film? Can you give me a sign of we are there? Does it mean 1 minute? 1 minute. It means 1 minute or actually 2?
Okay.
1.
And for this, the black people in Colombia have, of course, the high rates to the poverty, and we don't have the rights absolutely guaranteed, yeah. But again, I want to say that we have a very important political process, different to the another countries in Latin America, really. It's a very most advanced process, political. And we have many, many people working in local cultural process, yeah? De todas maneras, even so, we are talking about an extremely racist country, yeah? Where people like me continue to be the exception in literature or in the media, in the face of a rule that excludes us and makes us invisible. We need to have a love energy and come to a K festival where we are the rule, not the exception. I needed to be here to feel my soul and come back to my country to keep making magic.
Hola, yo soy Velia Vidal y les voy a contar una historia muy especial, que es la historia de Motete. Podríamos decir que el Chocó es la tierra del agua. Llueve mucho, mucho más que en casi todo el mundo. Hay muchos ríos. Está bordeado por 2 mares. La vida florece donde hay tanta agua. Por eso, el Chocó está cubierto de una gran selva y está lleno de animales. Animales del aire, de la tierra y, por supuesto, del agua. Podríamos decir que en el Chocó hay mucha magia. Aquí vivieron nuestros ancestros afro y los pueblos originarios de América. Y también fue una de las primeras tierras que pisaron los españoles. Estas 3 raíces se juntaron y crecieron y nos regalaron una tierra diversa, con mucha población afro, varios pueblos indígenas y también habitantes mestizos. La creatividad florece donde hay diversidad de culturas. Por eso en el Chocó hay mucha muchas formas del arte y riqueza cultural. Podríamos decir que en el Chocó hay también una historia de dolor. La exclusión, el conflicto armado, la ausencia de las instituciones, entre otras cosas, han traído carencia y dificultades a sus habitantes. Donde hay muchas necesidades, hay grandes oportunidades. Por eso en el Chocó y para el Chocó, creamos motete. Así como los ancestros llenaron sus canastos o catangas con comida para el cuerpo, nosotros queremos llenarlos con comida para el alma. Queremos encontrarnos alrededor de los libros, hacer que crezca la magia del arte y la cultura. Creamos eventos para leer juntos. Promovemos el consumo de los sabores propios y el encanto de contar nuestras propias historias. Encontramos mucha alegría en hacer que las letras corran como el agua, en cultivar la magia que nos dejaron nuestros ancestros y en convertir las necesidades en grandes oportunidades para crecer juntos.
Hola. Chocó is my region. It's a department or a state. I think that is the name. And Quibdó is the capital to Chocó. Quibdó is the city with more percent to the black people in Latin America. Yeah? Salvador de Bahia, usually the people say have the more percent. No, in Salvador de Bahia, the black people is 80%. In Quibdó, we are the 93% the black people in the city. Yeah, really, we said that Quibdó is Africa in Colombia.
Thank you so much for sharing all what you said. Also for the movie, I was very delighted when you sent me this video and said, "Oh, I want to show this video because it gives an impression." Because that's one thing I feel like, again, curating Black cultures in this sense makes it so important, because I feel like that was an introduction, an invitation to look elsewhere and how rich cultures are all over places where we sometimes do not think of directly. And when you said that about Quibdó right now, about the highest population, I was just wondering, is that something we can use for our quiz next year? Maybe. So back to all of you in terms of your festivals. You started this, you said why you embarked on this journey, and once this festival happened, what was the thing where you really felt, maybe you and your sisters, you and your co-founders, and you, yes, this is why we are doing this. I really found my sense of purpose. Were there moments where you felt so grateful that you embarked on this journey? Were there moments on the festivals?
Yes, I think for us, just hosting that festival for the very first time was very special, and it just affirmed everything that we believed, having to reach out to authors and them agreeing to come and, not questioning what we're trying to do, because in the countries and markets that are so used to platforms like that. So it's been incredible. We are very proud of what we do in the schools now with our volunteers. We've got a whole army of volunteers, and these are just not volunteers. These are most of our university students, or they just graduated, and they just also want to do community work. So they also do community work at Gaborone Book Festival Trust. So yeah, I personally, I wish Guy could be here to answer for herself, but I think yes, we are living in our purpose, and that's what really drives us and fulfills us. It's difficult, it's challenging, and that's why I'm saying to you, we are a bunch of very multidimensional sisters, and we do, we stretch our abilities to do other things. Right now my sister is pursuing her PhD in reproductive health. She's a lecturer, she's a consultant, she's a festival director. So that's how multidimensional we are. And I work full time, I've got kids, I do the festival. And this year I think was also very, very special because we published a book for the very first time. We have a book as Gaborone Book as the Trust, and it's a children's book. It's an anthology. It's in English and Setswana, and we assembled a kick-ass women team to work on the book and publish it. So, and that's sort of the work, and it's an EPUB, so you can all go to our website, Gaborone Book Festival. It's there, it's free, you can download it, and that's sort of the work that we also want to do more in future to just give accessibility to children, all over who are interested in, African stories, so that they see themselves, and that we did the translation also intentionally because we also want, we want to contribute in a small way to, the number of books that are written in Setswana, which is the widely spoken local language in Botswana, so that kids can also have access to books written in Setswana where they can see themselves. So it was a big project for us this year. So every year there's something to really feel grateful about and to really affirm that what we are doing is very important. Yeah.
So the story of Book Bank actually began with the literary festival. In our former lives, Angela Washuka, my co-founder, was the head of Kwani Trust, and part of her remit was to run Kwani Lit Fest, and she would hire me to produce a festival. So we walked into the Macmillan, I think it was about 2010 or thereabouts, because we were looking for a venue for this festival. We had used all the hotels, all the pubs, we'd used all the venues, and we wanted this festival to happen in a public space. So we walked into the Macmillan, and it looked terrible. That building was put there in 1931. It was put there for the exclusive use of the then colonial settlers. So our ancestors, our grandmothers, never used those spaces. So we walked into that space. We wanted to use it for the festival. We couldn't use it then, but it stuck with us. That a building that problematic, but also that important, could be left to such decay. So we walked away from that building. We had the festival in another commercial building. And then a few years later, as I then began to think about what to do next after my writing, the birth of Book Bank kind of happened, and Mashuka and I then decided to set up this organization to save libraries. But once that was done, and we're still in the process of transforming libraries, we thought it would be nice to go back to the original plan and have a literary festival happen within those libraries. And now the NBO Lit Fest happens exclusively at those three libraries. We start at the Macmillan on the first day. We have a children's festival in Kaloleni, which was a first library that we restored. And then the main festival happens in our biggest location, which is in Eastlands, which is also, I think, one of the most powerful things, because the way Nairobi is set up is still along the colonial line. So the city is still divided by highways, and the highways determine where you live and what access you have. So when a blockbuster comes out in Nairobi, it doesn't cross the highway to Eastlands. You have to go to Westlands to watch it. But because of this festival, we're bringing big names to Nairobi, like Lola Shonein, like Bernardine Evaristo, and those people come to the hood to discuss global issues, and that gives a sense of power to the people in Eastlands. It makes them feel seen. It makes their voices become a little louder, a little more confident, because we have shown them that your voice has space in a global stage.
Okay, when you can look in the video, the first organization was Motete, yeah? I started Motete with a small basket with books, reading in the neighborhoods in Quibdó, yeah? And the second year, we start to Flecho, Fiesta de la Lectura y la Escritura del Chocó, party of reading or writing to Choco, yeah? And Flecho have 7 events consecutive, yeah? And for example, in this year, we have 1,300 people in the events, yeah? The event now is in 4 towns, Turbo, Quibdó, Ismina, y Bahía Solano. Turbo is in the Caribbean coast, in the north of the Chocó biogeographic. Quibdó is the land in the video, in the Atrato River. Ismina is in the San Juan River, and Bahía Solano is in the Pacific coast. Yeah? Do you remember that Chocó have 2 seas? Yeah. We have events in the Pacific, in the Caribbean, and the most important rivers, the region. For us, the most important is the representation and the participation to the citizens, to the towns. Yeah. In the cultures, it's very common make elites. Yeah. In the festival, usually the guests are the more important. Yeah. And we have events, closed events for select people. Yeah. You have select activities. We don't have select activities. In our festival, the most important is the meeting, horizontal meeting with the guests, with the people. Yeah. And all time we are thinking, what is the most important meaning for the people? Not for me, not for the team. Because usually the team and I was an education with the whitewashed, you know, blanqueada. We have a whitewashed education. And when we are curating the cultures, put here the new ideas. And we forget that these new ideas usually are white ideas. Yeah. And forget the black people. And we are comfortable with, I am making a very important festival. Yeah? But the details, but the colors, but the words are before the black people? This is the most important for us.
I am so thrilled to hear your individual stories and also how you, I don't know, how you capture so much energy around what you do. I think like it's feelable in the room. And what is next? I think we started speaking about aspirations, and you, for instance, have high aspirations, and there's more to come. And I like a bit to hear about your ideas, your dreams, and your wishes for the future. And please feel free to think big. We at Ake here.
Okay. Okay. Let me start. So I think for us, the future is, so definitely we want to get into publishing. I think when we did it this year, it was our very first time to do that. But so much work. It's like, and I was working with Zukiso because we had worked with her previously during the work. So this is a legacy project. So we had initially had workshops. So we were picking up the stories from the people who were doing like a 6 months workshop. So we had done that with her. So we felt like because she now knows the stories, she would help better. So the whole reading, sending, so yes. But it's something that I think we enjoyed it. We know why it's important. So publishing, it's something that we're setting our eyes on. And then we've always talked about a residency. I think I told somebody about a residency yesterday, that we want to host African authors. I come from a country where we've got land, so we've got land. And yes, my great-grandparents have left us a lot of land. So we've got a couple of farms already. So we want to build something in the bush where the lucky author or lucky authors that can, take a proper Botswana hospitality. You can take care of them for some time. I mean, it's a moraka. Moraka is for us. It's where you keep your livestock. So you'll be there with our chickens and our full African setup. You have the beds in the morning to wake you up, and so definitely we want to go into residency I think very soon. Yeah,
I am ready.
we'll start with you.
Wanjiru, did you see how she's looking at me?
Yeah, like, sign me up,
And
please.
she also wants, probably when you were telling her all
Yes,
this
yes.
to me.
She actually has to come to Botswana. So I met her on the brink of COVID. So her hotel room was like 3 blocks away from my office. And she said, okay, she said, I'm here now. I was like, okay, I'll come and see you today. So when I knocked off, I went to see her. And then the next morning, everybody was closing, the world was closing up. And we said, no, I'll see you tomorrow again after work. I'll take you out for lunch and stuff. And I think, was it the Americans or the British are saying she needs to leave Gaborone immediately. So I saw her for a few hours. And then, but obviously the universe opened and I started seeing her again. So that's that. And then the third thing is, the very third thing for us is, we want to influence policy from an education perspective. So we're also looking at research. It's an area that we want to really go into to do research around kids, how the ability to read and not just do things from a thumbsuck. And so we want to contribute to research so that we can also influence policy. And we are in a very good space in Botswana now. We've changed governments. Government now, we've got a completely new government. So we are hopeful. It comes with that renewed energy and hope. So those are the 3 things for us.
Publishing, residency, and policy, and soon candidating. Good. Is it for 2025 or you at 2026?
So you'll come and try it out, and then before we start inviting people, and you will...
It's correct answer. So actually, I know that my answer is still in the air, and I still want you to answer this. However, I am very mindful that the Q&A session is about to start, so I hope you have mentally... Let me finish my sentence. Mentally prepared yourself, not mentally ready to raise your hands immediately, over-eager. Good. So questions can be taken now. Who was... please help me.
Okay, good evening. Buenas tardes, Velia. ¿Cómo está? ¿Cómo estuvo tu día? I wanted to ask you specifically, since this is your first time in the motherland, and there are common times of, descendants of Africa who are living abroad, coming to the motherland to sort of just stay there for a while, then go back and just get a motivation to do something incredible. So my question is, now that you are here in the beautiful land of Africa, what will you be taking back to Colombia?
I wait to understand. I write a column in a very important magazine in Colombia, week for week, yeah, and I am the only black woman writing here. And I wrote the last week about my trip to here, and I say I am very acting. Yeah, I am very nervous. And now I think that the most important is that we are the same route. And we can catch this. We can look exactly, but it's here. And I say this all time in Colombia when I come back.
Mine is more of a comment as a researcher for Kenanao. I think one of the ways you can start is the wisdom we already have at Aki. There are some researchers already here, like, I don't want to spell her name correctly, Nokukanya, who's doing her PhD. There's Ainehi. I think one of the main ways you can get into building this research team is to, first of all, start to look at 3 different points. The first would be research on writers of children's books, research on journalism in Africa that comes out on children's books. I also think you might want to probably steer clear of having too much of African researchers that are based out of Africa. You might want to kickstart with researchers that are African in Africa. Because I think there's the ability to do something really great with what you're saying. You can actually change the academic narrative, which is also suffering in Africa, just like the literary narrative. And I want to encourage you to really push for this research, because we need a lot of African researchers. When you look at journalism, for example, my field, 90% of all the studies are by white people in journalism, about the whole field, 90%. And so I shudder to think what that would be about children's literature. So try to make that difference that you're already starting by being intentional, and we'll be here to support you and cheer you on every step of the way. Please add the research. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much for such a wonderful conversation. And I guess this is a question for the whole panel, but even more specifically for Velia. You talked earlier about the slave trade and about the number of people who were enslaved and transported to the Americas, right? How can we bridge that gap? How can we create, because it feels very daunting, right? It feels very daunting to go back home, and I'm just thinking of myself and how I can take this back home. What are some of the things, tangible, actionable things we can do? Because quite frankly, I have a lot of African American friends, people who I love, very close to me, and there's a deep yearning. There's a deep, deep yearning to connect with African history, African culture, and just connect with our heritage. And not only, it feels daunting to me, and I'm Nigerian, but it feels even daunting to them. So what are some, of course, invite them to Ake Festival, that's a given, right? But what are some things that we can all do to bridge that gap and open our arms to descendants of the enslaved who live in the diaspora?
I think, again, okay. Creo que sí, que qué es lo que podemos hacer para quebrar esta falta de conexión con nuestra herencia. Sí. My English is not more bad now. I think that, again, the answer is the culture and the education. Yeah? The last year, I published a book for children. This book is Chocó, Selva, Lluvia, Río y Mar. Chocó, jungle, rain, river, and sea. Yeah? It's for children, and it's an informative book about Chocó Biographic. This book, this year, was the winner to the most important prize to design in the country. And it's the first time that this, the winner is a book project, yeah? And the jury decided that this book was important for the Afro representation in the literature, yeah? And in this moment, we was printed 6,500 books about this. And the most sellers, compradores? No. Sellers to the book are not, buyers to the books are not black people. Yes, are white and mixed people. And these people is learning about the Chocó and about the black people with are not stereotyping story. Yeah? And the books, the festivals, write our own stories. Only this is the way. The culture is the answer for crash this situation.
I'm so sorry. Guys, they will say I'm biased because I'm sitting slightly tinted that way. People were already eyeing me, so I'm sorry. After your question, then we go back, so we have a sort of balance. Are you happy?
Yeah, hello, salut, ¿cómo estás? My name is Manuel Faith. Thank you very much for this very rich conversation. I've learned a lot. And I feel closer to your culture now after listening to all of you. My question is probably for Wanjiru, but anybody can contribute. When you were referencing the Nairobi, Eastland, Westland thing, I was joking with my friends, and I was talking about how we also have Lagos, Highland, Mainland, and just talking about the classism that cuts across board. And my question is, how can literature continuously bridge this gap? Thank you.
That's an excellent question. Thank you. So in its history, the Macmillan Library had one of the largest collections of African works in the world. And this was true for a short period in the 40s, in the 30s and 40s and 50s before it got overtaken. Unfortunately, the definition of Africana works then is really outdated. It's books about Africa, the plants, the people, the fauna, and often not by Africans. That's one thing that my co-founder and I are so intent about bringing back to Nairobi, because that collection should be on this continent, and that's how you begin to bridge some of those gaps. Because if a collection is accessible on the continent, and then you have this magic thing called a library card that can get you access to all of those collections, then you get a richer sense of who we are, of what our history was and what our future might be. However, we can't only rely on the written word. So one of the things we do very actively at Book Bank is a project where we invite people who want to contribute stories about the past to come to the library. We will record them in audio. In the first year, we asked people to tell us, where were you on Independence Day? Come and record your version, whether you were out having a party or doing your hair or signing the Constitution, wherever you were doing, that story is important, because if we only look at the dominant stories, we're going to have an incomplete story. So all of these versions of Independence Day and the how many are we in Kenya now? 56 million. Those 56 versions of that story are relevant. And that's how you begin to use literature, to use storytelling in whatever format it comes in, to begin to bridge these barriers that were very intentionally created to keep us apart and are still doing so very effectively.
Thank you. So I loved your question about the Americas, and one of the things living in, so just going off the question about the Americas. So in North America, it seemed to me working in fundraising, I'm creating an endowment for Black Studies, that it's really hard to find a coalition at times because folks say, even though we're skin folk, we're not necessarily kinfolk. And there's a sense of, in the Americas, in the US at least, that the conversation is hitting a lot of speed bumps in terms of getting unity. And yet, I was in Colombia at the Pacific, in El Petronio, and it's something really special happening in the global South where people are paying attention to just, I guess, the importance of Black cultures, I know, in general. So I guess I just wanted to ask, in terms of bridging, I guess, this idea of longing, what's happening in Colombia, in El Pacifico, in Cali, that's sticking so well that perhaps could help in the, in the North, I guess, to create a better conversation? No sé si.
Yeah, the history is really different in United States and Canada and in Latin America. Yeah, it's different because after to the abolition to the slavery, the situation for the Black people in United States was very different to the Latin American people. Yeah, in United States, the people was the Osborne laws. Yeah, the apartheid. Yeah. Especially foreign to the apartheid. In Latin American and especially in Colombia, we don't have these laws. And do you remember that I talk about the silent racial century? Yeah. In this time, the Black people need work together. Yeah. And can make communities closed communities. Yeah, this is a problem for the rights, for the access to the education, to the health, to the another service, but for the culture was a protection. Yeah, the Black people in the United States, for example, was a relationship very connected with the white people and a relation about the capitalism, the works, jobs, yeah. But for us was very different. Our communities was alive in the communities, yeah. Fishing, in the small farmers, I don't know, farms. And for this, in the present, we can have, for example, el biche, the music, different practice, cultural practice with more conservation. Yeah, for some things is a problem for the rice, but for some things it's a good process. Yeah, for the conservation to the cultural practice.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to ask this question. I just wanted to ask Wanjiru specifically, and I suppose because one, I'm such an incredible fan of the work that you and Bookbank and Angela are all doing with the Nairobi Book Fair, and had the wonderful opportunity to be able to attend. And I think the thing that is so striking about it is the variations in the different kind of libraries that you're working with. So when you think of Macmillan or Eastlands or Koinange, I think I'm saying it, and just, I guess, the variations in it. And so I think when you're there and experiencing, you're just like, my God, there's so much work underneath the work of being able to experience the festival itself. And so what I'm very interested in is knowing whether, because of the spatial differences of the different libraries, whether you're seeing any kind of cross-pollination across the library. So I'm just thinking of children in one library being able to now interact into almost a different network, a different class. And if you're seeing having that kind of oversight through the different libraries as being some kind of equalizer and a way of sharing spaces that otherwise would not be shared.
That's a great question. Thank you, Phele. Sikle, by the way, rocked our festival last year. Her and her mom was such a hit. And this year too. Yeah, in fact, I take all the credit for their presence here. Thank you very much, and you're welcome. That's a great question because that's exactly the dream of Book Bank. We want our users, wherever they're in the city, if they have that library card, you can go to Westlands if you have a library there, you can go to Eastlands, you can go to the city center. And that's the dream for Book Bank and our work with libraries and for the festival, because for about 7 years, we've been asked by so many people, can you come and do what you're doing with libraries in our county, in our cities, even here we've had requests from Nigeria, and we'd love to do that. Because it means that you can then begin to export this notion of what a palace for the people is, and then you have more venues for your festival. So now we use 3 venues because we have 3 venues. But if we had 5, we'd use the festival as a way to travel through the city and see different parts of the city, which is one of my favorite things about bringing writers in. And they start the day at Macmillan, which is super prestigious in the center of the city, in a very kind of like, it's easy to access the city center, but it's also not, because if you can't afford the transport, then you're not gonna go into the city center. But then we bring it to you. And you can walk out of your house and roll over into the festival and come into the library and access this content. So I think that's the dream for the work that we're doing. Like, the more spaces we have that are fiercely dedicated to creativity in all of its forms, and the more homes we have for festivals. And then maybe like we end up having like NBO Lit Fest starts in June, and then we're having NBO Lit Fest 2 here in Lagos, and then which is already happening because we're sharing so many resources like across our festivals. And that can equalize us, because then there's no barrier to access if you just have that magic thing called a library card.
Any further questions? Oh, sorry. Yes.
Hi. So I guess my question, before I ask it, I've really enjoyed listening to the 4 of you. I think I've been educated and inspired in equal measure, and I wanted to ask, I think for Wanjiru and Kenanao, I think I have different questions. But for the both of you, my question is, for the work you do, what areas, a lot of the work the 3 of you do involves engaging with community and inspiring community and connecting people. So what areas do you feel that you can do more? And for Velia, I wanted to ask, I guess the work you do is more related to, I guess, literacy and inspiring community. So for that, are there areas where you experienced any problems? I was very curious about that. So what areas are there challenges and problems, and what areas do you feel that you can do more for the work you're currently doing?
So what more can we do? I think for us is audience development. I think that's one area that we can do more, because I think over the years what we have seen is we've got a lot of like your late university students and new graduates coming to the festival, and then like your 45 plus type of audience. So in the middle, like your young professionals, we are not seeing enough of them. But when I go to the local bookstore, I find them there and they are buying books. And it may not, I think we just need to do more work there. We just need to find probably other platforms that we can sneak into where they are spending time so that they can know more about the work that we do. And I think it's not an issue of they are not reading. It's an issue of they're not reading African literature. And I was that person 10 years ago. I was reading, but I was a reading snob. And I was just, a corporate girl, reading business books because I didn't think that I've got time to read fiction, But I got to a point where then I was transformed. And right now, I'll read 1 or 2 business books in a year if I've got the time. And I read everything African. And what I do also is I now even seek African business books because they are there. So that I can, if I want to just for that, to feed that part of my mind, and there are a lot of them. So I think it's, yeah, so the young professionals, I think your 25 to 30-year-olds, it's where we want to sort of cultivate a lot of, in that audience group. But I think because of that, reading other things and thinking that, fiction or African literature do not matter, or they're too serious to read that. So I know that mindset, so I see it, so yeah. And so that's the challenge for us. And I think then the other challenge is just around funding, and the funding is funding from local entities. So when I look at the work that we've done just this year, we've done it with people, with non-Botswana entities. For the very first time we had a fundraising dinner. We had to do it with Alexander McCall-Smith, because he had, he comes to Botswana every year, and he was like, okay, what can I do for you when I'm there? And you rarely get that from other people. So even when these books that I'm talking about that we've just published were funded by MasterCard, because the former president sits in the board, and when he's in the board, they're given stipends, and then he gave the money to GBF. So the local funding continues to be a problem, because I think what hurts is when you go to corporates and entities, and you talk about books. Books are so personal. Just start there. If somebody says, no, our CSR mandate is education, and you come in and you talk to them about books, these are people, some of them are executives and do not even read. So they don't even know what you're talking about. And I think, in one of the places that we've gone to, a bank, the head of CSR said to me, so if you are encouraging kids to read so much, are you not creating them to be antisocial? I never went back or sent an email as out. So you can't have that kind of conversation. But this is somebody who is making decisions about who they are going to give their CSR budget to. So if they don't understand, so I'm just giving an example. Like when you go into corporate, there are so many challenges, and to them, education is something else. It is not books. It is not books.
Thank you very much for this in-depth thing. I am so sorry, but the time is up. Are you two ready for the challenge of just giving us one brief sentence to close it up? Thank you. One brief sentence.
My brief sentence is, there's 180 public and community libraries in Kenya. We visited all of them. We know where they are. And the more we can do is to touch every single one of those libraries, because then we've changed Kenya.
My answer is do you remember the last question you? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes. My wish is to leave a legacy through social and literature work, a legacy for the access of our people to their cultural rights, especially the rights to imagination. No one can change their reality without having imaginated it first. I have full confidence in our personal and collective autonomy and our capacities to improve our conditions, but it is indispensable in order to do so to be able to imagine freely.
Thank you so much. You three are already creating legacy.